Welcome back. You're watching France 24. Coming up, the UK Parliament votes on a series of indicative measures to determine the way forward on Brexit. This as Theresa May hints at an early resignation in exchange for backbench support for her deal. Algeria's longtime ruling party drops its support for ailing President Abdelaziz Bouteflika, backing the military's call for a change in leaders. Protesters continue to demand wholesale change. Russia has to get out of Venezuela, warns Donald Trump in the wake of Moscow's dispatch of troops to back the government of Nicolas Maduro. The wife of rival leader Juan Guaido welcomed to the White House earlier. After the news, the France 24 debate. This time it really does look like the final days for Abdelaziz Bouteflika. What to make of the Algerian army pulling its support for the ailing president? Aren't the citizens who've been marching for change celebrating? What next? Tell us on Facebook and Twitter. Hashtag F24Debate. In the UK, on the day Parliament tries to seize control of the Brexit process with indicative votes that will be tallied later and that could up the pressure for a softer departure from the EU, Theresa May has just broken up a meeting where she's promising an early retirement to ensure passage of her twice-rejected Brexit divorce deal. The PM due to address the House of Commons after early telling a meeting of Conservative backbenchers that she's, quote, prepared to leave the job earlier than I intended in order to do what is right for our country and our party. Let's cross to London and correspondent Bénédicte Paviot. Bénédicte, what can we expect in that speech?
Probably a confirmation of what the Prime Minister has just said behind closed doors. This is significant. It has been rumoured many times. Although we don't have an exact date of departure, the fact that the Prime Minister has just said behind closed doors to her Tory backbenchers, I'm prepared to leave this job earlier than intended in order to secure a smooth and orderly Brexit. And then when answering questions from those Tory MPs, making it very clear that she, once she has delivered Brexit, would step down, would not be Prime Minister for the next phase of the negotiations. And of course, that's what everybody forgets, that although, of course, this exit is extremely important, the withdrawal agreement is extremely important, that next phase that really will bed down and will be the whole negotiation about the future relationship of the United Kingdom with the EU is probably set to be at least as lengthy as the 3 years that we've just had since the EU referendum. So this is Mrs. May playing that trump card, so to speak, or May card, because she has got her main mission. She has always said it is to deliver Brexit. She's failed to do so twice with the meaningful vote back mid-January. Reminder that it was a record-breaking defeat of 230 MPs. Then on the 12th of March, again, a failure to carry it through, defeated by 149 votes. And now a big question about if and when she brings it back. We were thinking perhaps tomorrow, perhaps even business being cleared by the government in Parliament, perhaps Friday. But, of course, this huge spanner thrown in these dramatic times in the House of Commons this afternoon by the Speaker himself, John Bercow, saying if there isn't a substantial change to that deal, then he is not minded to allow it to be put before MPs. And he was quoting the rule book known as Erskine May. That is what he says he's basing his ruling on. But that big, finally, Tory MPs being told by their leader that they could get a new leader if and when they vote through this withdrawal agreement.
Yeah, one of the ironies is that most of the motions that are going to be up for a vote later in those indicative votes, therefore either a softer Brexit or, well, effectively a second referendum. And that seems to be rallying some of the hard Brexiters to May's cause. Let's listen to staunch Brexiter Jacob Rees-Mogg.
The choice facing people now is do we accept the Prime Minister's bad deal or do we not leave the European Union at all? And I've said for some time that if that were the option, I would back her deal because we must leave, and her deal provides that we legally leave, even if it has significant disadvantages to it, but that is better than remaining in the European Union. I will support the deal if the DUP are willing to support the deal. If they feel that there are enough safeguards for the United Kingdom, then I will support the deal regardless of the Prime Minister's position.
So, Bénédicte Pavio, does Theresa May have the votes she needs?
Well, that's the million euro, million pound question. Nobody knows that for certain, not even the Prime Minister, not her aides, nobody. What we know that the Prime Minister needs, since, as I was saying before, she had significant defeats, she needs all the Conservative MPs to vote for this. Plus, she needs, we think, 25 Labour MPs to vote for it. And of course, she needs those European Research Group that are led by Jacob Rees-Mogg, those Eurosceptics. And they have very much been minded to wait for the DUP, the Northern Irish Democratic Unionists, those 10 votes of those Northern Irish MPs on which the government, the minority Conservative Party, really relies on to push any legislation in Parliament. And the DUP, we thought this afternoon, were about to make a statement when John Bercow made that statement that he did not think that if there was no substantial change in the meaningful vote, well, in the withdrawal agreement change that she's brought twice before Parliament, then he was not going to allow a vote on this. One quick word on the amendments or motions that you're referring to this evening, 8 of them that have been selected out of the 16 proposed. Let's remember, they are significant, they are unprecedented. MPs have clearly seized control of Parliament and of the business and of the future and a possible way forward in the Brexit process. But let's remember some important words. They are not, repeat, not legally binding. It is an indicative vote. So they would influence the government. But Theresa May was very clear in the last few days. Again, she's against, in principle, any kind of indicative votes like this. And it is this huge battle, this war that we've been witnessing, reporting on here, going on in the House of Commons, in Parliament, between the executive, so effectively the Prime Minister and her government, and Parliament. And of course, we'll bring you those results as soon as we have them, we think, around about 9 p.m. London time. And we will be checking in, of course, throughout. Many thanks. Bénédicte Pavio reporting live from Westminster. Donald Trump earlier at the White House in the company of the wife of the Venezuelan opposition leader Juan Guaido, pulling no punches.
She has to get out. Just so you understand, all options are open. Go ahead. All options are open, yeah.
Yeah, Trump reacting to news that 2 Russian transports landed in Caracas last weekend with 35 tons of material and troops, there an estimated 100 of them. Earlier we spoke to our White House correspondent, Philip Crowther.
Well, it's quite a show of support there from the U.S. president and indeed from the vice president, Mike Pence, as well, in the White House. This was supposed to be a closed press meeting between Fabiana Rosales, the wife of Juan Guaido, the self-declared president of Venezuela, and the vice president, Mike Pence. But the president wanted to be a part of this, so the press was called into the Oval Office as well. And that is where we heard from President Donald Trump so clearly say that Russia should get out of Venezuela. Of course, the Trump administration has also seen those reports of military planes arriving in Venezuela. That we know. There are, of course, those unconfirmed reports of who exactly was on those planes. But this was another show of support from the Trump administration for the self-proclaimed presidency of Venezuela. Remember that the United States has been a little bit frustrated over the last few weeks with the number of countries that have recognized what they consider the legitimate interim government of Juan Guaido. And at the beginning, when the United States became the first country to recognize this leadership, there were quite a few countries, including many countries in the European Union, that got on board. But since then, not all too many. And of course, there is that key country of Russia that is standing with the Nicolas Maduro regime and not with the interim regime, as the White House calls it, of Juan Guaido. It wasn't just Fabiana Rosales who was in the Oval Office. There was also the wife and the sister of Roberto Marrero. He is the chief of staff of Juan Guaido, who had been kidnapped, at least for a short while, by security forces of Nicolas Maduro's regime. His house had been broken into, and they also told their story in the Oval Office earlier today.
Philip Crowther. In Mozambique, as the death toll from Cyclone Idai continues to climb, topping 700, including casualties in neighboring Zimbabwe and Malawi. Floodwaters receding, but the race to reach those in desperate need of food is now coupled with the first outbreaks of cholera. Erno Gunke has more.
As Mozambicans grapple with the aftermath of a devastating cyclone, a race against the clock to prevent a second disaster. The spread of waterborne diseases. Several cases of cholera have already been confirmed in the city of Beira. This resident of the Munhava neighborhood is worried about the fate of his brother.
He has cholera. He vomited for the first time.
How is the situation inside the hospital? Are there many people like your brother?
Many people.
Mozambique's director of health has warned it is highly likely the disease will spread beyond the currently confirmed cases.
Cholera is an epidemic situation. You see, when you have one case, you have to expect that you will have more cases in the community. Therefore, the health workers are there in the communities, work hard with communities, how to organize them, how to prevent, how to treat water and everything to prevent the spread of the cholera.
Cholera is an acute diarrheal disease that spreads in water or food sources that have been contaminated by the feces of an infected person. It can develop quickly in places where people do not have access to clean drinking water and consequently turn to contaminated water sources to survive. The disease can kill within hours if left untreated. Later this week, the World Health Organization will dispatch 900,000 doses of cholera vaccines to the affected areas.